It's something we gotta work with. Appreciate it. And with that, we'll move on to regular business, approval of the agenda for June 11th.
Moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approval of the minutes of May 14th.
Moved.
We got a motion and a second for the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Director's report.
Continuation of the webinar series, the APPP. There's a listing of the available webinars in your packet. Have also a report on the end-of-year balance update. Kristen, if you want to make those announcements.
Sure. Thank you, Phil. Well, our estimate as of June 1st has increased $355,000 to a new estimate of $765,000 that you can see here on the screen. This was due to a couple of things happening over the last month. The first was that project that had originally obligated 3 years ago, de-obligated about $90,000. And then secondly, the more of a bigger impact is WAMPO had changed the funding source for a planning study we were going to do and changed it from the STP source over to our operating funds. So that project's going to get paid for the operating funds, which then freed up about $260,000 from our TIP funds. So right now we again have got its balance of about $765,000 projected for our end of the year balance, and we're hoping to firm up the number hopefully mid-month next month. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have on this. Thank you.
Also have the announcement, I believe on your table, for the 2019 annual Bicycle and Pedestrian Count event. That'll be September 19th and 21st.
You're stealing my thunder.
I'm sorry.
Everyone sees the safety vest, so it's that time of year again in September. We're starting to recruit right now. Sorry, Phil. Starting to recruit for volunteers for our annual Bicycle and Pedestrian Count event. It's on September 19th, which is a Thursday from 5 to 7, and Saturday, the 21st, from noon to 2 p.m. This is one of the only ways that we get data for our bicycle and pedestrian network to show where people are using the system. We run on all volunteers and me, so if you're interested, the vest is at your desk. We have flyers if you can share. We have 35 sites around the region, so all of the communities are mostly represented during this count. So I do need help. Right now, we only have 9 volunteers. Did you sign up? Thank you. So we have some repeat offenders who can tell you it's an amazing experience. If you're a people watcher, you will love it. So anyways, here's some flyers up here, and let me know if you have questions.
So at your table, we have provided this chart that shows the funding commitments for 2019 through 2022. Over that time period, WAMPO will commit $48,338,000, almost $339,000. And you can see the breakdown of the how that money is going to be allocated. There's also a table or a chart that shows where the money is going in terms of suburban communities, the core city, the city of Wichita. WAMPO has applied for some of those monies, and there's also a couple of roadways in the unincorporated areas of Butler and Sedgwick County. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to try to answer. If not, would also like to announce that I finally realized that I'm old and that it's time for me to retire. So I've announced to the executive committee my last day would be August 30th. And I took this job for a 90-day interim period, and that was over 3 years ago. And I think it's time to to move on and relax for a while. So I appreciate all that you've done and all of the work that you've put in. This is a difficult job and kind of fitting in what's the transportation network and the mode choices that for this county. So I will miss the job. I will miss you, but I think it's time to do something new.
Well, along those lines, we have started advertising for the position, and with a deadline of July 10th to review those. The executive committee will review those applicants, and we'll go from there. Bring you back a recommendation, and we'll keep you abreast of how that's going. We'll put that in advertised.
It's been advertised in the American Planning Association, International City Management Association. Our website will be on our website as well.
All right.
And
Yes, sir.
who makes that hire exactly? I've not been through this, so
Makes
who
sense.
makes that hire?
We do we'll bring back a recommendation, and then the board will review and make a decision.
The executive board will bring back one recommendation.
Hopefully. If not, if we have, if we get down to where, we think there's two good qualified, we'll bring them both in or three, or whatever it happens to be. So,
Can you remind me who the board is again? Because I'm not familiar with all those either.
myself, David Dennis, Bruce Armstrong, Tom, and Jim with the city of Wichita. So we got one from the city of Wichita, one from Sedgwick County, and then Tom, pardon? Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
James. Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How is that board formed?
The chair and the vice chair and the TAC are approved by this board, picked by this board. And then the other two are at the discretion of the chairman.
And how long do they serve, the board as?
The chair and the vice chair and the TAC, and since the new bylaw changes, will only be on there for 2 years, 2-year terms. And then, like I said, the other two standing members are just by the chair.
Thank
He
you.
was on when he moved over, and James. Questions?
I heard a question too, and I was talking about a little bit, the last time we did an interview process, we only had 3 candidates apply. All 3 of them were interviewed, extended your recommendation back to this board, and the board elected not to hire that person. So we brought somebody in on an interim. We haven't pursued that since, so. And I'm assuming the same thing will happen again this time.
I'll let you know at the next meeting how many applicants we do have. Else?
No.
All right, consent agenda.
I do have an announcement on one of the items on the consent agenda. Was on item 1, the 2019 TIP amendment, there was a typo on one of your sheets. It had $9,000 for, I believe it was right away. And that should have been $9 million. So instead of the cost estimate being 17.5 million for North Junction project, that is now 27.5 million. That number includes the 1 million that, the 500,000 that Sedgwick County committed, and the 500,000 the city of Wichita committed for right-of-way purchase.
Questions? Agenda?
Motion approves consent agenda.
Second it.
Bruce and Tom, all those in favor say aye. All right, motion carried. Public comment. We- Going up to the podium, thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane Burns. I live in 322 South Lorraine in Wichita. I sign in on behalf of one organization, but I speak strictly as a proponent, as an advocate for walking and walkability. I've spent some time here before talking about the health of walkability, especially for students and seniors. Because you're the transportation gurus, I want to speak on behalf of walkability again. I am joyous that I hear that word, walkability, more often in the past year than ever before. AARP says that livability equals walkability. According to Jeff Speck, who wrote the Reader's Digest for Walkability, Walkable City Rules, walkability should be useful, safe, comfortable, and interesting. Some recent examples of this growing trend is walkability as economic development when walkability is useful, such as in Delano and Old Town, and in discussion and progress now in downtown Wichita and the Douglas Design District. Active transportation has been growing rapidly. As you see on the backside of the bike ped count piece in front of you, in the 7 years of its data, active transportation has grown by 80%. By the way, 71% of that increase in 2018 was pedestrians, and another 3% or so was, other, like skateboards. At least half of those sites that were listed as the most heavily used sites were definitely not recreational, whether they were folks were commuting or saving money on gas or just going for health, who knows. Companions to walkers that are also vulnerable to cars are e-vehicles. At last night's Wichita Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board, 3 20-something e-skaters talked about the quickly evolving trend of PEVs. Know what PEVs are? Personal electrical vehicles, such as skateboards, one-wheelers, and unicycles, and LSV. Guess what that is? That's low-speed vehicles, such as golf carts. Each of those 3 guys last night had been in cities where those were in considerably wider use, such as, and including e-scooters. Younger people are growing that transportation mode very quickly. Walkability. I'm so glad that Sedgwick County is building a pedestrian walkway across the big ditch from Hayesville to Campus High. I want to say on behalf again of schools that the KU School of Medicine Public Health team teamed with the city in April to paint crosswalks around one elementary school, and they hope to continue to elicit volunteers to paint crosswalks around other elementary schools. I know this is out of your realm. But we're talking about a third of Americans, Kansans, and folks in the WAMPO area who do not drive cars. I'm passing around a picture that's in a part of Wichita, but it's a wheelchair guy in a whole lane of traffic where there's no other option. There's no sidewalk for him. I personally have seen that situation on Grove just last week, a wheelchair pair in a travel lane of Grove where there's no sidewalk. There's no way for those handicapped folks to get around. So those third of Americans, Kansans, and residents do not drive cars. That's tourists, sometimes students, low income, seniors, health advocates, skateboarders, millennials. They need tax dollars as well. They need transportation money at facilities as well. I urge you to budget for that. Old or young, vigorous or slow, newfangled or old-fangled walking. Do not those folks also deserve transportation facilities, transportation funding, and transportation safety? Transportation is changing. The world is changing. Transportation funding should evolve for the health and safety of those 1/3 of us. Thank you so much. Are there any questions, or comments? Thank you so much.
Anybody else would like to address the board? If not, moving on, new business, TMA certification review, Paul Fonduca. Paul?
Thank you all. There we go. I'm going to give you guys a little warning. I kind of had to hustle this presentation together on very short notice. I might stumble a little bit. I'm purposely going to rush through some of these parts in the effort to save some time, to not drag it out. But if I'm going too fast for anybody, just stop me, and I'll slow down a little bit and explain what needs to be explained. And as I go through them, if you have a question, a comment, you don't have to wait till the end. Feel free to interject at any time. So we were here conducting our every 4-year certification review. Some of you know me, Paul Fonducas with the Federal Highway Administration. I was joined by my FTA counterparts, Kathy Monroe, Eva Steinman, Victor Austin. And we jointly conducted this review over the last 4 months, 5 months, rough, give or take. This is a review that we have to jointly conduct, and it's unique to TMAs. Those are our large urbanized areas of more than 200,000 people. And we're really just looking to ensure that the 3C process is in existence and that it's working the way it's meant to work. Why are you here today? Just to hear me blab? I'm going to clue you in on how the process works a little bit, but that's probably what I'm going to skip over most of. We'll share with you our initial findings, and then we'll kind of open it up to see if you guys have questions, feedback, specific or general. How is it done? A lot of this is just me and my FTR counterparts sitting at our desk and looking at your core documents. It's a lot of reading. That's the bulk of this review process. Really just making sure that everything we're doing is meeting that myriad thousands of pages of federal regulations that we try to keep you guys away from as much as possible. But we're also kind of looking at the relationship aspect, which we can't just get from reading the core documents. That's part of why we come down here for a few days, quarantine your staff in a room, and bombard them with questions. I'm sure your staff can share with you some more stories of those experiences. Ultimately, all of our findings are going to be put together in a report, hopefully a short one, that'll detail any of our commendations, any recommendations, or just generalized observations about how well the process is working. What are we really looking for? I like to include this slide whenever I'm talking to people about the planning process, because I feel like these couple of, well, really one big long sentence helps encapsulate what it is we're looking for. It's an informed process by which transportation decisions are deliberately being made. So we're looking to make sure that this process is being informed and that decisions are being made deliberately by you, our elected officials. At the bottom there, you see the 3C process. That's something that's kind of explained in the regulations, but it does a good job of encapsulating what the process really is meant to be, continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive. prior review findings. I didn't want to sit here and list all of our previous review findings because that would drag out this presentation far longer than you wanted to. Instead, we just tried to go back and look for some of the hot topics, the things that might have popped up more than once, the things that we might have had challenges with in the past. So knowing what our challenges were in the past, we sat down with our MPO friends, our Wichita Transit and KDOT friends, and we tried to figure out what did we want to focus this review on. We generally try to take a risk-based review where we're only looking at certain topical areas. Otherwise, we would have to quarantine your staff for weeks at a time to try to get all the information that we needed. And this is more or less what we came up with. Nothing was particularly surprising in those topical areas that we picked. So I did rush through that. Any questions so far? Comments? None? Okay. So we went through this whole process, took us a few months. We just spent the last day and a half with your staff, and we've hastily looked at our notes over the last couple hours and come up with our initial findings, which, like I said, we'll ultimately put in a review report for you, but we feel like we owe it to you as a courtesy to at least give you a heads up about what our initial findings are and to give you a chance to provide us some feedback. I always like to start with the things that we were impressed by. First and foremost, we're very impressed with the organizational improvements you've made over the years. We know that we've had some growing pains over the last few years. I think we finally come over that hump and we're on that kind of downward slide of success. This is something we mentioned last time, but it's worth reiterating. Your tip fee that you have is a very novel, very unique, and impressive way of generating cash match. We see that as a best practice. It's something we've been sharing with MPOs all over the country. The efforts that you guys have made to address staffing issues that we notified in previous certification reviews, we're very impressed. For the first time in a long time, we had at least 3 or 4 faces that were here for a cert review that were here for the last cert review. That's kind of unique for this area. We used to have a very hard time maintaining people. You guys have made some changes in your staffing structure and pay scales that have helped address some of the staff retention issues that we saw. Marketing and branding. One of the biggest challenges of trying to stand up as sort of a breakaway organization is branding yourself and getting people to recognize you as an independent organization. We think you guys have done an excellent job of that. As part of this process, we conducted a public survey to get a sense if the public had any feedback on this sometimes esoteric planning process. We were very pleasantly surprised. We had a lot of respondents. Over 70 respondents participated in that survey. A lot of them had a lot of good things to say about WAMPO, so we were very impressed. And you should take some pride in that you have a lot of good, positive name recognition out there from more than just the people in this room, because there's no 70 people in this room. So. Moving on to working relationships. We see this as an area where you guys have dramatically improved, especially at the staff levels. I've been working with WAMPO and KDOT, Wichita Transit, for about 10 years now, and there were times when it was a real struggle, and we had a lot of egos conflicting with each other and making it very difficult to cooperate. I've never seen it any better than it is right now. The day and a half we spent with staff from those 3 organizations was extremely pleasant. This was probably the easiest and most pleasant certification review I've conducted in a very long time. And this is reflected in your documentation as well. You guys have a 3C partnership agreement among the partner agencies. And it does a very good job in very simple, not lengthy terms of identifying who does what, who your responsibilities are, and who's accountable to who. And I think documents like that help to strengthen a relationship. So that way there's no ambiguity. There's no pointing fingers. Board education. This was definitely a best practice. We're going to start taking around to our other MPOs. In the last few years, your staff has done a great job of bringing more useful, actionable information to you guys, in addition to kind of educational opportunities like the speaker series you guys had. I think it wrapped up, a year ago, 6 months ago, something like that. All the scenario planning work that took place over the last couple years. These are amazing examples of your staff really trying to arm you with good information. I wish more of our MPOs would go to those lengths to try to engage their policymakers. Public input. Definitely an area where this MPO shines, certainly in comparison to some of your peers. You guys take public involvement very seriously, and we greatly appreciate that. It's much more than just a check the box process. You guys deliberately go out to where people are and are trying to gain insightful information about them, about what they care about, letting them speak to you as opposed to you just speaking at them and watching their eyes glaze over. There's definitely a level of engagement and thoughtfulness here that we don't see elsewhere, and you guys are definitely commended for that work. On to the recommendations. This time around, there's really no heavy lifts. Things are working rather well. We had a couple of recommendations that are kind of carryovers from last time, and this really is more of a challenge to you, the policymakers, to try to start thinking holistically and regionally about the identifications of your transportation needs and investment decision-making. You're definitely on that track. Compared to 4 years ago, we think you're in much better shape, and you're definitely on the right trajectory, making progress. Really, the recommendation is keep it up. Similarly, for the long-range plan, the MTP, we think you guys are on the right track. We think this next MTP update is going to be substantively improved over the last one, but we will continue to challenge you guys to think holistically, think regionally, and to make strategic investment decisions. And on the documentation end, to try to do a better job of connecting the dots in the document, make it more readable. On the UPWP front, we've been making small improvements over the years, and that's something we want to continue to do, is make clarifications in our task descriptions, in the organization of those work tasks, in our deliverables. We want to find a way to better engage you throughout the UPWP process. For most of our MPOs, the UPWP process is not something the boards generally want to get too engaged with, but we want to challenge you to try to get more engaged. This whole process, like I showed you a few slides ago, it's all about trying to arm you with useful information. The UPWP is that opportunity for you to tell staff what information you want, what would inform you to help you make better decisions. So cogitate over that as you're going through your UPWP development cycles, and try to think, well, what kind of information would you like to see that would help you in your decision-making process? A very minor recommendation in regards to public involvement. Don't know how practical it is, but we challenge staff to think of opportunities for ways to coordinate their public involvement efforts with some of the partner agencies. So when Wichita Transit or KDOT or KTA or the City of Wichita is doing some kind of public engagement activity, can WAMPO piggyback on that opportunity to conduct their public engagement, thereby saving people who want to be engaged a second trip, and maybe broadening their horizons. Maybe they were only interested in learning about that one street project that the city was doing, but now they happen to learn something new, and maybe that'll get them engaged. Maybe it won't, but it's worth a shot. This was my number one, or our number one takeaway. Over the last decade, it's clear to us that the MPO is maturing by leaps and bounds. You are definitely where you need to be right now. And if you stay on the same trajectory, very high potential for you guys to be a leader among MPOs, to really be an example. And Kansas needs some good examples, right? We need to lead the way. This isn't just in your organizational practices, but in your planning practices and your public engagement techniques. You're where you need to be. So we commend you for all the progress you guys have made, and we challenge you to keep it up. So, what to expect next? We will have a draft report out to you guys 60 days, more or less. We'll try to get a first draft out to staff here in the next several weeks, give that a good shake through, fact check it, wordsmith it, and then hopefully get a final document out to you guys by the end of August. That's what we're shooting for. We anticipate a clean certification action. No corrective actions, no stipulations. You'll be certified until 2023 when we have to do this whole process all over again, and I'll be back. So wait for me. Expect our continued engagement, particularly on the MTP. We're very excited where your MTP is headed. So we're going to try to stay as engaged as we can in that process. I think that's it. Told you I'd rush through it. So questions, comments, concerns from any of you at the tables, from anyone in the audience, fire away.
Here 4 years ago when the other process, and this is, we have made some great improvements, and we appreciate our staff working with you and the other partners to get to the point where we are moving forward. So that is good news for us, and we need to hear it. We think we're doing good, but it's nice to have your group come down and go through the certification and find the good things that we are trying to do. So appreciate that. Anybody else, comments? Thank you
Going
very
once,
much.
twice? Okay, well, just as a parting comment, just to drag this out, because I know you got free time on your hands, I do want to put out a special thank you to your staff. They were extremely hospitable to us, and they made this process very easy on us, which quite often isn't the case when we do these reviews. So sometimes we're very unwelcome guests. So thank you all. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to get in touch with us. We'll get back to you soon with a draft report. Thank you.
Next is vehicle to grid presentation, Ken Rowe with Wichita State. Appreciate you coming back. We cut you off last month.
Quite all right, and thank you. I appreciate being here. Yeah, my name is Kent Rowe. I'm with the Green Group Sustainability Group at WSU. We're proud to announce we do have now a sustainability minor that is be starting up in the fall, and that means in all areas of engineering and geology, for one thing, because geology is changing quite rapidly because of the narrowing of the need for more drilling, more exploration, and so on and so forth. It's changing more from exploration into mitigation of unplugged wells, undocumented wells, leaking wellhead regions. And in fact, I just came from a family reunion out in Elk County where I was mayor of a small town out there, and we had a large crowd out there, and they sent us away with green beans, potato salad, and so forth, and water samples, because there are well treatment chemicals and such that they're constantly on the watch for. These are things that's very vital in those areas. We have an artesian well in that area called Busby, which is hardly recognizable now because it's kind of a fiefdom, a small feudal society that we're desperately looking for new types of income. So the data that I have to present here comes from IEEE, Institute of Electrical Electronics Engineers, Utility Drive, which is a online news area on what's happening with the smart grid, and Energy Dive, so forth, smart energy decisions. And my favorite is, take note of this if you want to transport, evolve. Nikki Bloomfield Gordon, anyone watch that at all? A little blurb every so often on electric vehicle transition. And that is something that almost daily she comes out with, very, very plaintive, very nice to see. If you're at all interested too, we're holding at WSU Tech a symposium, all-day symposium on Tuesday, the 18th of June, called Powering Forward. I really recommend that you attend that on the new smart grid. So what is the smart grid? Again, energy storage, electric vehicles, renewable energy, power quality management, and outage management system. This involves how we can respond to emergency natural disasters or other when the grid goes down. The electrical grid can be down. And this is the entire area of the smart grid. It's a 470 some page document. But right now, I'm just wanting to concentrate on these areas: energy storage, electric vehicles, renewable energy, power quality, and emergency preparedness or outage quality. And the punchline here that I have, this is what I'm trying to convince you of, right here. These are the states that have solar rights and some of the states that do not. Now, Kansas does have an energy or a solar easement provision that if you have solar installation and someone puts up a building or attempts to put up, the trees, and so you cannot be blocked on that easement. But we do not have, like Texas and Utah and some of these other states have, we do not have a solar rights. In other words, a covenant, a neighborhood architectural committee or a subdivision can prohibit you for just arbitrary means from installing rooftop solar. Now, why is rooftop solar so important to transportation? Well, right now, and it's changing all the time, here are the charging stations in this region, right here. And we're seeing Casey's General Store. Someone told me they saw one, that these are the fast chargers that we see like at Town East. Has anybody seen those out there, those monolithic looking white devices? Those can charge your vehicle going cross country in about 20 minutes. The green ones are like what Westar has over here, where we had our Drive Electric Week down here at First 100 block on Broadway, North Broadway. These are the level 2s, and that takes anywhere from 3 to 4 hours to completely charge your vehicle. But these right here represent Town East and a few others that are around here, the fast charger. If you're driving across country, again, you can pull in here. You have an app on your phone or otherwise a map that tells you where the locations of these are. So you can drive pretty much all the way across country on electric vehicles. And it's getting better. I was looking down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Walgreens is installing these. Walmart actually has them, and you can get on PlugShare. That's where this comes from, and you can tell where the different types of plugs and the different types of chargers, the fast charger. The electric school bus campaign is ongoing. Sierra Club does support this quite well, and others in that. Why have electric school buses? Well, here's how it turned out. Bloomberg and Forbes did report that per bus, $1,600 back to the schools per bus, because you not only pick up and return the students, but you run the schools in the meantime at peak demand times. What's peak demand time? If you look on your bill, you'll see peak demand. And in the summertime, that can really bite you, because peak demand is anywhere between 30 and 70% of your total bill. When you use electricity, when it's being demanded the most in the summertime primarily, then you pay, I think if you have solar right now, it's $9.10 per kilowatt hour in this state. In the Westar area, it's not so much in our area of Butler Rural Electric, but those are times in which you have to pay a premium. And there's communications that's involved back and forth with when you need this the most, and you pre-program your vehicle, your bus, or whatever you have to attenuate or dampen that peak demand. And that's also when we have to recruit, the utilities have to recruit some of the most expensive and the most dirtiest power that is becoming more and more undesirable for various reasons. So let's see. U.S. Postal Service, here we see an example of that. I'll kind of zip through this a little faster. Fleet charging, same way. They charge at certain optimum times when the rates are lower and when abundance of renewable energy is around. Even the military. Now, this is a hybrid plug-in fighting vehicle that has the V2G, vehicle to grid, or vehicle to fighting vehicle, that is actually utilizing this technology instead of having convoys that carry materials, fuels, and so forth, that to forward staging areas. That we found in my experience when I taught with the Air Force, that was a real burden and a risk and expense. And here's what the military posts have seen. Right here is the V2G, which you can peak power shaving right there, that brown area. But it's not just load management. It's also frequency regulation. Frequency regulation, 60 cycles per second. Well, sometimes you don't get a really clean sine wave on those frequencies, and that costs in terms of various degradation of transformers and neutral lines and overheating on induction motors and so forth, and stators and so forth. So these are quite important in that review. And here are the standards right now that we do need to adopt for V2G, in that the UL standards, as well as the SAE, Society of Automotive Engineering, that we should adopt for this community. Pretty much, and also the communication protocols, because that becomes more and more important out there. Proterra bus, transit buses, we're going to be seeing that. That'll raise our consciousness a lot to reinforce our thinking in this area, because when these come online, when is it, September, we're getting 11 buses for Wichita Transit. That also has very, very good potential for V2G. Now here it is, the various types of plugs right now, and I'm sorry that there's not a lot of abeyance on there, but we're working these things out with the types of plug-ins that are around. The one on the end here, the most impressive to me, is the Nissan Leaf, which you're pretty much familiar with. There's the Tesla one, Tesla supercharge stations. You'll see supercharger on some of the maps in the plug share, but you'll also see with Walmart beginning to employ the CHAdeMO, Charge de Move, it's called, for the Nissan Leaf. And as of late, just heard this last week, Honda Fit is now offering grid services on their new models. It's already happening in California. What is grid services from a vehicle? Well, indeed, you just plug your vehicle in and the power flows both ways. It has a 5 to 6 kilowatt inverter on board that vehicle, and Nissan is planning to do the same thing. So this is changing the business model for utilities that we're finding. The business model for utilities is getting away from power generation and more into reactive power from the public of their vehicles. And the utilities become more of a cloud supervisor on that. And you do receive, or should receive, a premium back on that grid service, that reactive power that your vehicle does provide. The communications on this, no new towers. This is on your phone app usually, and in fleet levels. So you have a park and ride scheme. That park and ride scheme that's going with, say, an electric light rail or electric bus can actually power or displace that power that you're utilizing in there. That's how smart communities are doing things now. Oh, in fact, by the way, how many electric cars were sold in Norway last year? More electric cars were sold in Norway than were combustion cars, and we're expecting that trend to rise greatly. Now, there's the plug-in for the Nissan Leaf, 400 volt DC that you would see at Town East. Yes, we caught ourselves out one day. We were just about out last winter in a Nissan Leaf, and we couldn't make it home. So we just creeped into the Charger. 10, 20 minutes later, we were all charged up, ready to go. So they were quite good. So, and there it is, another V2G fleet, all plugged in here, putting back on the grid or to a specific business, an office building, a shop, school, or what have you. This is what we're seeing. These are the trends. I'm sorry, it's not going to change. It's going to happen. It's occurring now. And there it is with the reactive power. The V2G can handle that normal load during the time of day, and that's where those load management come in. But don't forget about frequency regulation. That is actually is from Europe. This is a 50 cycle. Of course, we have the 60 cycles here, but we can see the variations and the harmonic distortions that occur. Power quality is a real issue with these utilities. Power quality is something that we have to grapple with. And here's the famous duct curve, teaching the duct to fly in that the time of day and when renewable energy kicks in, wind and solar, and then the demand is right here when everyone drives home. And that's something that we have to strategically look for on a smart grid. And where is the time? And if you actually govern and regulate it, you can actually teach the duck to actually come and fly. You can see the difference here on these kinds of where you smooth out these curves so we don't have these overloads at a certain time of day and then needing something else. And there's the other area of the Internet of Energy, all the aspects of the communications networks that are around that we already have pretty much in place. Like I say, you run these from the apps on your phone. And again, three-phase where industry uses. You have harmonics occur here, triplet harmonics, little ripples in these sine waves, and it causes a second, third harmonic. Actually, tripling is third harmonics. It would be 6, 9, 12, 15 harmonics that give rise to equipment failure, transformers overheating, various kinds of resonance, neutral wires, inductive capacitive overheating, and incorrect values. This is pretty important if we're going to move into the digital age in this area, in this community. And that's, again, why I'm promoting solar rights. And in fact, if you have solar on your roof, and you can actually, before it gets to the meter, and that's we're doing this now ourselves and other places, before it gets to the meter, the utility doesn't even see it. You tap off prior to it going through the meter. You can go directly, say, during the day when the sun's shining, like right now. And this would be the hour, 2 to 7, isn't it, where you have the highest demand charges from Evergy or Westar. But you can intercept that with your own system, given you have that information. Here are the wireless networks, various types of communication routes, and so forth. And there it is, the Texas Property Code that I would like to see enacted here. Communities can do this before the state does, and we'll see what happens on this. In that, no one, for just arbitrarily reasons, can prohibit a homeowner from installing solar on their rooftops of their homes. And a lot of architectural committees, I think, mistaken that think that the ones that stand up. These are flat panels that just fit the contour of the roofs. Conduit can actually be placed in the back where it's not visible from the street, or go through the roof. But also some covenants don't allow you to have an electric vehicle because they don't have they can't have a visible cord in their driveway. Silly stuff that I think we need to traverse in this in this way. And there is a difference between wind power and solar power in that the quality of the electricity power quality, in that a cloud can come over your solar panels and dampen that load. The load is suppressed, or droop, they call it. And wind, again, it probably tends to be going with inertial load. The closer to the source, the better. That helps immensely the quality of power for the grid. All right. Thank you very much. Anybody want to talk to me later on, please do. And I'll remind you, Powering Forward, WSU Tech, Tuesday. Like to see some of you there. Thanks.
You. Okay, moving along, project selection process. Chris?
Before Chris starts, I'd just like to point out that, as Paul Fundakis told you, that we have to go through lots of rules and regulations when it comes to meeting what the federal government wants in terms of project selection. We have to meet performance-based planning standards. We have to meet performance measures that you've approved. And at the same time, we try to be flexible in how we set up the project selection criteria. And you can see that we've done a fairly good job based on the sheet that was given to you at the beginning of the meeting. This is a tough process, and one that I think that we're going to refine as we go along, but Chris is going to give a little bit more explanation now on what we're going through and what we're trying to develop in terms of why the selection committee or selection process is the way it is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Phil. So based on the discussion of the selection criteria at last month's meeting, we're coming back to you with a bit more detail on how the project submission selection process is going to work, and also the membership in the project selection committee that will be making a recommendation to the policy body for which projects would be eligible for WAMPO funding under our next MTP, Move 2040 Reimagined. So start out talking a little bigger picture about the selection process, and then we'll delve into the role of the selection committee in a bit more detail. This is going to start with the call for projects, which I will go out on a little bit of a limb for in saying we are looking to issue later this week. We will be asking all of our member jurisdictions and planning partners to submit the projects that they would like to see on the list for WAMPO funding under the new MTP. And they'll have about 2 months to do that. The proposals will be due in mid-August. After that point, there will be a project screening phase. This is going to be a lot of work for staff. We're going to go through all of the applications and make sure they're complete and we have all the information that we need to process them. We're also incorporating a bit of public engagement here. We're planning on asking members of the public for their opinions on these prospective projects, and that'll be among the information that goes to the project selection committee. This is something we first did with the TIP last time, and we think it was pretty successful. And finally, staff will be working on initial proposed ratings for the projects on the project selection criteria. The final ratings will be decided by the selection committee, but the staff will do the analytical work to come up with proposed ratings to go to that committee. The selection committee will meet mid-October through mid-December, and I'll come back to that on the next slide. But just for where it goes after that, there is another phase of staff work looking at the project list as a whole. There are a couple of types of analysis that are required by federal regulation. Analysis based on the finances, based on environmental justice, that we have to have the whole project list for. So that follows the committee's recommendation. And then finally, another round of public engagement, asking the public their opinion on the projects that we've chosen and on the MTP as a whole. And then the TPB makes the final decision. You guys are the deciders. And we're looking at targeting June of 2020 for that decision. So just a year away, long process. So diving into the selection committee work, so that that middle element there. Selection committee is going to meet quite a few times during that 2-month time period. They're going to start off with sort of an orientation meeting and a kickoff, make sure everybody's on board, understands what they're going to be doing. We will hear from the project sponsors. This will probably be split over 2 meetings, assuming we get plenty of applications, which we're certainly hoping and expecting. We want to hear from all the project sponsors, give them the chance to make their case for the projects that they're submitting to be eligible for funding under the MTP. The selection committee will go through and make its decision on the ratings on the selection criteria that you approved at last month's meeting. Again, they'll have the final decision on this. And then they will select a recommended slate of projects to recommend to the policy body, actually choosing the list. Finally, one thing we haven't really discussed with you guys yet, and this really is not part of the MTP, but we're sort of piggybacking on it. Next year we will have to do a new TIP, our short-range 4-year transportation improvement program. We do a new version of that every 2 years. We did one last year, so we'll have another one coming up next year. And if we followed our usual practice, we would just get done with this project selection process and then have to, for the MTP, and then have to stand up a whole new process and a new committee to select the TIP projects. So what we're going to do is essentially ask this committee to do double duty and make a recommendation for some of these projects that they've already just looked at and are fresh in their minds to receive funding in 2023 and 2024. So just to be clear, that is not technically part of the MTP process, but we're sort of piggybacking on this for efficiency's sake. Save the committee some work, save staff some work, save our project sponsors some work from having to do a whole nother round of applications. So that's the overview of how we plan for the mechanics of this to work. Now, in terms of the committee membership, we currently have 5 confirmed members. These were chosen by Chairman Wajak. Those are Donna Klassen from the City of Mays, Ann Stephens from Bel Air, Mike Armour with the City of Wichita, Jim Weber with Sedgwick County, and Dan Squires with the City of Derby. We also have one outstanding invitation, someone who has not committed yet. As I sort of implied here, this is quite a big time commitment, so I don't want to speak for anyone who hasn't willingly taken us up on this offer, but I may have one name to add to that list for you at a future date. So I'm happy to take any questions on the process or the committee membership. All right. Thank you very much.
Agreed to serve on that. So, committee updates. The executive committee, actually, we will discuss that during the executive session. So we'll go from there. Tom, you got anything?
Nothing to report.
Tom, you got anything for us?
We have lots of projects going on. The RED project, I-235 and US 54, has almost officially wrapped up, but for a driver, it has wrapped up and is completed. So we moved on to the green project up further north on I-235, but so far it really hasn't been much of a nightmare for drivers that weren't already there before the project started. We have a lot of night work going on I-135 between the south end of town and the north end of town, but that's night work, and if you're not out in the evening, you would never know what happened, but if you drive it during the day, you say, wow, some good things have been happening in the overnight hours, but it does create congestion at night, even though the traffic numbers are way down. We also have some weekend work coming on I-135. Bulk of it, well, we have another night one coming on US 54, but again, night work. So lane restrictions at night when traffic is down, and then the next day, those of us that are out during the day say, wow, good work.
Richard Buckland, do you have any?
Yeah, a couple of updates. First off, it's great to have the chance to be back here, and obviously with great timing with our certification review. I'd just like to add a couple comments on the cert review. Number one, As Paul alluded to, I think your staff has really been making significant advancements with the process, and I can tell you, my staff actually was very excited with this review and in terms of the positivity. So the comments I received were very positive. And the thing I'd like to echo as well, I know there's a number of new board members, is within Kansas, you all are the largest MPO. So a lot of MPOs look to you as an example. So the fact that this has gone so well and the types of innovation that you're doing, especially on the public involvement, I think are great practices to move forward. Um, Along with that, and I was going to talk about this as well, and I know that Mike Moriarty's not here, but I believe most of you are aware that Kansas DOT is advancing a new statewide plan. They had a kickoff meeting about a month ago. I attended that meeting, and I can tell you that at the statewide level, whereas federal requirements are purely for a policy plan, they're going above and beyond. They really want to look at strategy. So I think the timing of the work that you all been doing, and also even on your project stuff, it could be good collaboration with KDOT. So I know that from the statewide level, they're looking to make their plan way above and beyond, look at strategies and performance measures. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of involvement talking with you all. Updates from my end. First off, we do have our new administrator in place. It's been a while where we had Brandy Hendrickson as our acting. Nicole Nason was confirmed and brought on board May 2nd. Nicole comes to us from the State Department, but she previously was an administrator of NHTSA and worked in the Secretary's office. So she brings a very strong safety background, and that's already been echoed in some of the things that we've been doing. So I had a chance to talk with her. She gave me a call the previous week. We were actually talking about flooding issues. Kansas is a lot of that's going on. You all have been dealing with it as well as other parts of the state. So she and I had a chance to talk about that. But she's on board, and at some point we'll probably get her out to Kansas. In April, we had Tom Everett, our new executive director, out here. He spoke at the KTEC, Kansas Transportation Engineering Conference. Had a chance to meet with KDOT and some of the folks, but and he was here at the NACE conference. He gave. So we were down here in Wichita for that. Wanted to give a plug in for the, we do have a notice of funding opportunity out there since April 23rd. It's for our BUILD program. This is our Building for Infrastructure Leveraging program. It's one of our grants. It's our grant for this year. This is a nationwide solicitation with a big focus on local governments. This solicitation is open till July 15th, so we're getting towards the tail end of it, but I would highly encourage you all to consider that. I know, Phil, you were copied on an email I'd sent out a few months ago about that. There were a number of webinars. Some of the focus areas, again, are on local governments, but also opportunities to improve transportation in underserved communities, opportunity zones. This is an initiative that our administration kicked off in December with a White House briefing. And we just had a zones meeting in Kansas City, but this is an initiative where HUD has created a national map of where these federally designated zones are. And here in Kansas, Wyandotte County has one, Topeka. And Wichita has a few zones. And the focus of these zones is to look at economic development from the federal level and working with the states and locals. How can we create jobs, create businesses? And transportation is a big focus of this. How can we support that? So with this Build Solicitation Grant and other programs, we definitely encourage you all to take a look at that. There will be a Wichita event happening this summer. So look to have us out here with HUD, EPA, FDIC. I know that I've talked with KDOT, and they're very interested in this as well and are considering this in their statewide plan update. So we'd be definitely happy to share more information on that. So just wanted to make brief mention. Flooding impacts, as I was talking about earlier, big issue. I know we've got 60 counties now that on the state declaration, and I think approximately 20 on the federal level. So we're working with KDOT and their Office of Local Assistance and you all to determine what those damages are. And we do have our emergency relief program. So that's in the works. So what else? I think that's about all that I have. But it's good to be back, and especially on the day when we've got some great news to share. So any questions for me? Thanks.
Thank you. Always appreciate it. Okay, other business before the board, anybody need to bring up? If not, I'm going to go into an executive session. I move we recess into executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel and consult with WAMPO's attorney about possible misconduct by an employee. We will reconvene the open meeting in this room at 4:17 PM, 10 minutes. So if we could ask everybody aside from the board members to exit the room, we would appreciate it. Oh, yeah. And approval, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Once
Thank
again,
you.
can alternate